Hi, everyone, and welcome once again to another edition of the Walter's Wanderings Travel Podcast. Today, we're going to talk about financial literacy and how to go ahead and make sure you have the right amount of money for the right amount of vacation that you deserve. So, my special promotion is simply this: if you tell me the words financial literacy when you ask for a quote, I will send you off with the $50 gift card to that'll be useful in the destination you plan to go to. So if it's a cruise, it'll be a gift card or onboard credit for the cruise. If you're going to Disney, it'll be a Disney gift card, et cetera, et cetera. And if you're going to go to Washington State to Seattle, I'll give you an Amazon gift card because, well, they're located there. But anyways, with me today is my guest. He's a financial planner, and he's going to talk about something. I really have wanted to have a financial planner sort of person on the podcast because the money aspect of travel is really underrated because of realistic intentions and everything else. So I have Larry Sprung, who's a certified financial planner, and he'll tell you all about what he does right now, and then we'll get into the conversation. So, Larry, thank you for joining me on the podcast today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Scott. It's a pleasure to be here.
So tell me about yourself. How did you get into financial planning, and how does financial planning advice relate to people taking vacations?
Yeah, so I mean, it was a long and windy road for me to get here, but I love this industry. And just to give you a little background, for your listeners, so they know why I'm here. Essentially, growing up as a kid, not too far from where you are now, Scott, in Rockland County, my mom was diagnosed with cancer at a very young age. She was young, and I was very young as well. As a child, and I saw my dad go through struggles, trials, and tribulations as far as having to manage two jobs, bills, my mom's medical care, and he didn't have a financial advisor or a financial planner to help him navigate that. And I recognized that having a financial advisor wouldn't have mitigated any of my mom's health conditions. But at the same time, I always felt like if he had somebody guiding him, somebody shepherding him and helping him through that process, it would have been very helpful to him and his financial stability. So it was something that I became very interested in at an early age, and essentially right out of college entered the field. And more or less in 2004, so going on 17 plus years now, I launched Mitland Financial, which is my firm. I'm the founder and wealth advisor, and we essentially do what I wanted somebody to do for my dad: help them plan. We help them and guide them towards retirement and towards their goals and objectives. And essentially, we help them design and develop that plan to work towards it. And we handle the assets and all the coordination that goes along with it, coordinating with clients, accountants, their tax professionals, their insurance professionals, et cetera. So it's a very rewarding career. I love it. And, I think it relates very heavily to what you do, travel. I think it's important to have a budget for travel expenses in your overall game plan, for sure.
So now, obviously, not everyone has all the different vehicles you're talking about. Not everyone has a whole bunch of stocks and bonds. They don't have a whole bunch of real estate. They could be living in a rental apartment, at whatever the cost of that is, and they could have a couple of kids in school and all of that. But, for them to be able to properly save for a vacation, it can be a difficult thing. So I guess, let's talk about, the people on that end that are somewhat budget conscious, but still want value, because obviously value is more important than price, because price is what you pay, but value is what you receive. So how do we talk about, them working on savings strategies so they can go ahead and afford a vacation that they deserve?
Yeah, so I agree with you, 1,000%. And at the same time, I hope people understand that, vacation, travel, time with family, it's really invaluable. I mean, when all's said and done, that's all we have are these experiences that we have with our family, our loved ones, our friends, etc. So, no matter where you are on the spectrum, whether you are in a rental apartment or you live in a $5 or $10 million home, there's things that should be done and talked about in order to prepare for a vacation or a trip or travel. It's just going to be a different level, right? So I think it's important to start with the end in mind, right? What do you want to get out of this trip? How long do you want to go away for? What do you think you can financially commit to this trip? Now, some of your listeners may do that over a year, and some may take a couple of years to actually, save and put away those funds. So you have to figure out, what is this going to really cost? And that's where a professional like you comes in, where they can consult with you. This is the type of trip, this is the experience we want to have, and we want to get the most value for that amount of money that we're going to put away. So what is that going to look like financially to us? And you can help design that. And then once you have that end in mind, you could then start breaking that up into bite-sized pieces in terms of, okay, if it's going to be a $5,000 trip and I have 2 years, basically it's about $200 a month. If I get paid twice a month, I'm going to have to put away $100 every paycheck in order to meet that goal, and breaking it off into bite-sized pieces. And I don't know what your experience is, but I always tell folks that when they're doing that budget component for their vacation, that is
call from Adam again. What?
No, go on.
When they're putting that budget together, it's important that they also probably add in a little bit of a cushion in terms of, if prices go up, sometimes things have a tendency to cost more than they expect. But that's really what they want to do, is start with the end in mind and kind of get a framework and a visualization of what that trip and that experience they want to look like with their friends, family, and people that they care about, and then back into a monthly budget that's going to be comfortable for them. And it'll also give them an indication, is that something that I could feasibly save for over the next 6 months, the next 12 months, 24 or 36 months? It may take that long in certain situations.
Well, I think it points to one of the things about travel that is very helpful, is that in most cases, vacations require a small deposit. For cruises, it's generally $250 a passenger for a deposit, sometimes less. And with some cruise lines, there are ways to even get better value from that. Norwegian Cruise Line has something called the Cruise First Certificate. So for $150, you actually get $300 worth of deposit, which is really helpful. A Disney vacation, the deposit's only $200. So even if you have a family of 5, you can deposit that, and you can basically book a Disney World trip up to 400 days or 499 days in advance for a room, and depending on when they determine next year's availabilities, you can book that out. So there are ways you can do that small bite thing rather than trying to stuff that 3-foot hero down in one bite, which is never going to work. And again, the cruises, there are some cruise lines that are actually booking out into 2025. So there is plenty of time. And again, myself and other travel advisor colleagues certainly understand. And if you want to make payments, every other week or twice a month, we can go ahead and process those payments for you so that you go ahead and get to your end goal, which is full payment. The other thing is, in most all cases, once you pay the deposit, your price is locked in. So that's really important to know. And it's really important to do it early. And especially the past 2 weeks, I have never been busier in my almost 8 years as a travel advisor. It's the cabin fever has, obviously come to a head. COVID, for the most part, is in the rearview mirror. There might be a little speck or two of virus hanging around for some folks, but for most all destinations, it's a lot easier and more feasible to travel now. So indeed, you can go ahead and you can do your deposits and book with confidence, and know that you'll be going away on vacation. So now, when it comes to doing things, when you meet with a client and you ask about their lifestyle and their choices, does their leisure time and vacations come up in the conversation when you're doing your initial client evaluations?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely something that we have to take into account when we're designing and developing a financial plan for folks. especially while they're working, that's typically included, or they have an idea of what that expense is, and that's covered by their traditional income. But it's very important for us to have those conversations with them in regards to, okay, when and if you retire, when that time comes, and now you are no longer getting a paycheck, but you're living off your assets, what do you want your vacation budget to look like? Are you talking about a $10,000 trip every year, a $15,000 trip every other year? So we want to factor that into their overall game plan and make sure that we're accounting for that. And then we always ask, are there any like bucket list trips? Because, you may have this annual or biannual budget that you're looking to do travel with, but maybe there's that bucket list trip that they really want to put on their wish list for travel that, maybe they want to take a cruise around the world or something really massive in terms of travel. I went on an Adventures by Disney in 2019 to South Africa. That was a bucket list trip for my youngest son. Quite expensive. We had to save up for a while for that. And, so that would be a kind of trip that we want to make sure we bake into the cake, so to speak, for their overall financial plan to see if it's feasible for them to do that.
Yeah, I think it's really important to sort of, separate and delineate between, those trips that, will take a bit more effort to, have the means for than the simple, a week away at, your favorite resort, wherever that might be. Because there obviously are big differences. Because I know my bucket list is a bit more modest than going to South Africa, but I still have things I want to see. I still want to cruise through the Panama Canal. I still want to I want to do like a 2-week Mediterranean cruise where you go both the Western Caribbean, Western Mediterranean, and the Eastern Mediterranean. I want to eat souvlaki and Santorini. I want to do stuff like that, and those things. That's a different level of planning than if you're going for 5 nights to the Wisconsin Dells to see all the water parks. It's an entirely different thing altogether. Yeah. Now let's get back to the Adventures by Disney thing. You said you went to South Africa before the COVID hit in 2019, and you said it was a bucket list trip for your son. So describe the process of finding that trip and how you got your son, pumped up, and how did you tell him? Did you spring it on him? How did that all work?
Yeah. So for my son, for my youngest son, so just to give you some background, our family's Jewish. So, traditionally here in New York, there's a huge bar mitzvah when they're 13 and a big party that goes along with it. And my wife and I weren't big subscribers to that kind of methodology. So at a very early age, we offered both my sons the opportunity, in lieu of a party, we would be willing to do a trip with them and maybe invite some family and go somewhere. So in full disclosure, my oldest son chose, he wanted to go salmon fishing in Alaska. So we took a Disney cruise to Alaska, which was fantastic. And we created memories for 10 plus days in terms of, instead of just having a 4-hour party. My youngest son, we offered him the same opportunity, and he's a huge animal lover, loves animals, loves exotic animals. He wants to be like an exotic animal vet when he gets out of college. He's currently 15, and he was thinking this way even at 13. And he said he really wanted to go on a safari. So we boiled it down to basically 2 trips. We looked at the Adventures by Disney with regard to South Africa. And then we also looked at one through the Galapagos Islands, Adventures by Disney. So he had boiled it down to those 2 trips and ultimately decided that he wanted to go on the Adventures by Disney, and consulted with my wife and I, and we decided that it would be a fantastic time for us to do that as a family. And at the ages they were, my youngest was 13 at the time. My oldest was 16. We thought it'd be a great experience. So ultimately, he kind of made that decision, and it was a fantastic trip from beginning to end. I can't even explain. For your listeners who are accustomed to like the Disney way, The way I kind of equate where Adventures by Disney falls is, if you think about the parks and the level of service you get there and the hotels there, which is pretty high service and value, I think. You then go to the cruises, which I think are even a notch up from what you find at the parks. And then I think you go to Adventures by Disney, and if you've been on a cruise and you don't think it could get any higher, it does. I mean, the Adventures by Disney was even a higher level of service, higher delivery on expectations, and it was just phenomenal from beginning to end.
Yeah, the Adventures by Disney, they're very small groups. They have multiple group leaders that Disney has. Plus, they also have all the local tour guide type people and all that on board, and basically no detail is unattended to in any of those Adventure by Disney trips, be it to South Africa or if you go to Europe, or even the ones they do here in the States, because they actually do some in the States as well. So Adventures by Disney is highly recommended, but accordingly, it is, again, price is what you pay, value is what you receive. The value you're receiving is very, very high. So the pricing on Adventures by Disney is not for the faint of heart.
As I shared with you before we started our conversation today, Scott, to this day, in full disclosure to all your listeners, to this day, I don't know exactly how much that trip costs, because being a financial advisor and planner, I like money going into the bank, not necessarily out of the bank. And I didn't want to really know how much it costs. I knew we could afford it, that I knew, and I knew there wasn't any issues there, and we had saved and set aside for a bar mitzvah, so the funds were there. But at the same time, I didn't want to know, because to me, knowing that would ruin my experience on the trip. So I didn't want to know that. I want to have a great time. So
right, and also, when sometimes if you know how much something costs, you're trying to see if you can actually if you can get to the whole, okay, it costs this much. Let's see if we can, does the experience match that dollar amount? And you'll always be disappointed if you do that. I think overall, it's funny you mentioned your sons and their bar mitzvah trips, because my daughter had her Sweet 16 literally right before COVID in February of 2020. So what we did, and this is a funny story, my wife and her went to London and Paris for her Sweet 16. Now, we didn't tell my daughter this until we had to spill the beans when we got her passport renewed, because we got her passport renewed right before the trip. And she goes to us, because she's a very smart cookie. She goes, if you had waited till my birthday, I would have gotten a 10-year passport. You get a 10-year passport. And my wife had to confess, well, we couldn't wait because you're going to London and Paris for your Sweet 16. And, of course, the jaw dropped. And she had to pick it up off the floor of the car, because we were at the local passport office in Stamford, Connecticut. And she says, "What?" And so as I was driving home, my wife was explaining all the details, and they got to do wonderful, authentic experiences in both cities. They got to make macaroons in Paris. They got to see Mamma Mia on the West End. They got to see all the tourist things you generally get to see. And the highlight for my daughter was having her birthday dinner at the Eiffel Tower.
Wow.
So,
sounds like a priceless experience to me.
That's the whole point. Listen, we all have stuff in our houses, and, we all know that the storage unit industry is just ridiculously booming. And if you bought stock in that industry, you're doing quite well. And we know that the junk remover people, have their ads on the radio and television all over the place, and because we have too much stuff. And I think one of the things in life we have to do is declutter our stuff and create and make memories. And I think having financial literacy is really important. Now, are your boys like really financially literate, or have they sort of left that be aside and then figure they'll catch up later?
No, I think they are very self-aware and to a degree financially literate, to the extent that now 16 and 18-year-old, or almost 16 and 19-year-old could be. But I think that a lot of that has to do with the fact that they grew up in my house, right, where this is what I do for a living, and they've seen that. So my older son, for example, has had a Roth IRA account since he's 14 years old. He's been contributing. He was actually part of an article story written by Money Magazine about kids starting early on with retirement accounts. And my youngest is in the same vein, started out with a retirement account at the age of 14 as well. And, my 14-year-old, just to give you an example, my 15-year-old, I should say, he's at a point where he has his own business. He's a big sneakerhead, so he resells sneakers, and he understands, the value, and he buys sneakers and sells sneakers. And, so I think that for them, they are literate. And if there are questions, they come to me for advice and guidance, which is great. But I also think they're a product of being in our household. And I think that there are a lot of kids in a similar fashion to them that are not financially literate because they don't have somebody who's in my industry in their house. I'll give you a perfect example. My older son came to me last year. He had a friend of his that through the pandemic was stock trading. And while the markets were going up, he was making money. He was following the meme stocks, the AMCs and the best, the Bath, Bed and Beyond stocks that were going on. And my son comes to me, he goes, I spoke to so-and-so, and he told me that there's a new rule that he's going to have to pay taxes on all this money that he's made in the stock market. And I'm like, what? I said to my son, that's called capital gains. That's not a new rule. That's always been in place. You buy something, you sell it, you make a profit, you have to pay taxes on it. So the point is that clearly this other kid, he's 18 years old, clearly did not understand that there was going to be taxes owed. He felt whatever the profit was, he was going to keep 100% of that. So that's the type of financial literacy that we've been talking about and instilling in our kids from a very young age. And to this point, I think this would fit in very nicely for your listeners. There's a great piggy bank out there. When you think about piggy banks and young kids, most people think about the pig with the one slot and that's it. Okay. From a very young age, we had gotten piggy banks for my kids that actually have 3 slots. And you can find them all over wherever you want. You Google it, you could grab one. And it just really helps instill this financial literacy. And the 3 slots are save, spend, and charity. So basically, when your kids get birthday money or, allowance or wherever they get money from, you teach them that, hey, listen, some of that you save, you put away for maybe a trip, a vacation later on, or while you're on vacation with mom and dad. Certainly want to have some fun along the way and spend. Or maybe you put the save for college and then the spend for those vacations when you go with mom and dad. And then the charity, never forget, that there are other people out there that are, no matter where you are in the spectrum, somebody's worse off than you and could use your assistance and help. So it's always nice to be charitable and, come up and work with your child on a way to break up that money, in terms of it doesn't have to be necessarily a third, and a third. Maybe you put 5 or 10% to charity. Maybe you put, 40 or 50% to savings, and then you put whatever the remainder is to spending, whatever works for you and your family. But it starts teaching your child that when they get money, whether it be from work or some other way, that it's not just there to spend and go out the door, that there are other things that they should be thinking about. And it's really helpful to start them at a young age thinking that way.
Well, that's good advice. I really like that 3-slotted pig idea, and it's never too early to start, and quite frankly, it's never too late to get on the bandwagon either. Just for some of us who maybe are not so well skilled with how to deal with their money, like myself, admittedly, it's never too late for me to learn a new trick or two to make my life even better and somewhat easier. I think one of the big things though for me is going to be to try and declutter and sell some of my junk or donate it away so I can get like the tax deductions for it, because quite frankly, we do have too much stuff in our houses. I don't we all know this. And I think that's probably an easy way to, at least get the ball rolling from that aspect. Well, I think you've offered some great advice. I'm glad that New York State has a half of a year in high school to financial literacy type classwork. I think it's important. There could always be more, how to balance a checkbook and a bank account, but we'll get to that. And but I think planning for a vacation is really crucial, and the money aspect of it is certainly one of the more important things. After you decide where you want to go. Once you decide where you want to go, you have to decide, how, with what means you're going to get there. And again, the biggest things from my end are the small deposits generally, and you do have time to pay. So it really works out that you can do that. And even with your Adventures by Disney trip that you still don't know how much you spent, there was a deposit, and then there were payments along the way. And then, your wife says, I'm not telling you, but I'm finishing off paying for this. And, it's her secret, and she'll take it to her grave. And I think it's great that, someone doesn't know how much something costs sometimes. It keeps that sense of wonderment and awe. I think you agree with that.
Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly. And I think one other thing that many times gets overlooked are a lot of the ancillary benefits of travel. And what do I mean by that, right? We get hung up on the cost and where we're going to go and what we're going to do. But, if you go on a great trip, or you have a great experience, and it doesn't have to be an Adventures by Disney. It could even be just like an extended weekend of 3, 4, 5 days to a great location that you book through Scott. There's so many great benefits that you get, such as, mental stress, kind of eased off, you de-stress, you come back energized, you come back refreshed. There are so many benefits that you get from a great travel experience that, you can't just look at, well, what did I get for the money? It's all, you got to look at the total picture. Did I come back relaxed like I never did before? Imagine if you started doing that instead of once every 2 years, if you did it every year, how would that benefit you and your health and your physicality? Could be huge. So there are a lot of ancillary benefits that sometimes we forget when we're writing that check or sending you the deposit, but there are some really great benefits to travel that outweigh any stuff you can buy.
That's true. You can't quantify, the experiential part and the authenticity, aspects
100%.
of travel. There's no way you can quantify that. The only negative I ever have from travel is when I come home, I have to do the laundry, and and sometimes, I have to also do cooking and cleaning and other stuff. But that's it, But
well, I will tell you this, Scott. Sometimes we budget in dropping off the laundry at the Fluff and Fold into our vacations, just so we don't have to worry about that specific task.
Well, there you go. That is practical advice. But Larry, you've had a lot of practical advice on this episode. I really appreciate it. Thank you for hopping on board. And for everyone out there, this is the Walter's Wanderings Travel Podcast. Mention financial literacy, which means you've actually listened to this episode. And I'll send you a gift card of $50 on a 4-day or longer vacation that will apply to whatever destination you go to. So you'll be able to spend some money and be able to remember the vacation with a souvenir, a frosty drink, or some other thing that'll make you happy. Again, this is the Walter's Wanderings Travel Podcast. We'll be on with another episode real soon. Take care and have a great day.